The first thing people always ask me is why I ever agreed to stay in that house, especially after everything they told me. But the truth is, I didn't think much of the warnings at that time. People love telling scary stories in small towns. Stories about shadows that move, doors that breathe, and places where you should never stare too long. I thought this was one of those tales meant to keep curious outsiders like me in check. And honestly, I needed a quiet place to rest, a place far away from the noise of my everyday life. I didn't expect anything unusual. I just wanted peace. I didn't know I would find anything but peace there. The house sat at the end of a long gravel road, surrounded by tall trees that leaned inward like they were whispering secrets to each other. The outside looked normal enough, maybe a little old and worn down, but nothing too strange. If anything, it had a soft, lonely charm, like it had been waiting years for someone to notice it again. The owner, a woman named Mrs. Hara, welcomed me kindly. She had warm eyes but a nervous smile, like she was thinking of saying something important yet couldn't decide if she should. It wasn't until she handed me the keys that she finally said it. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "don't look behind the curtain." Her voice tightened around those words. She didn't say don't touch it or don't go near it or don't open a door. She said don't look. And for some reason, that made the warning feel even heavier. I laughed lightly, half expecting her to smile back and shrug it off as a joke. But she didn't. She just pressed the keys into my hand and looked away like she regretted saying anything at all. I wish I had asked her more. I wish I had taken her seriously. Inside, the house was quiet, the type of quiet that feels like it has been holding its breath for a long time. My footsteps echoed across the wooden floorboards. Dust floated through the air like slow-moving snow, catching the soft evening light that seeped in through the windows. Everything smelled faintly of old books and something else I couldn't place, like time itself had settled into the walls. There were only 4 rooms on the first floor. A living room with an old fireplace, a small kitchen with mismatched tiles, a dining room with a long wooden table, and at the very back, a narrow hallway that led to a closed-off area. That hallway felt colder than the rest of the house. It wasn't dark, but it felt like darkness was close behind it, waiting. I didn't want to linger there, so I quickly went upstairs to get settled. The bedroom was simple but comfortable. The bed was soft, the blankets freshly washed, and the window looked out onto the trees, their branches swaying slowly as the wind brushed through them. For a moment I felt safe. This was supposed to be a bedtime sleeping story, something quiet and calming to help me unwind, not something that would crawl under my skin. I told myself the house was old, that old houses had old sounds and old stories, and nothing more. But later, after sunset, when the world outside turned dark and the trees became silhouettes with long fingers stretching across the lawn, I heard it, the soft rustle of fabric downstairs. It sounded like something brushing gently against cloth. I tried to ignore it. Maybe it was the wind slipping through a crack somewhere, or maybe the house settling under its own weight. But the sound came again, just a little louder this time, like someone shifting behind a thin piece of cloth. The kind of sound you hear when someone moves slightly, trying not to be noticed. I told myself not to be paranoid, not to think about the warning, not to imagine curtains moving on their own in empty rooms. I lay still in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every little noise the house made. Eventually, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember is waking up to a soft tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from downstairs. The air in the room felt heavy, the kind of stillness that makes your heartbeat sound too loud. I sat up slowly, listening, holding my breath without meaning to. Another tap echoed through the silence, followed by a faint, dragging sound. I didn't want to go downstairs, but the longer I waited, the more the tapping seemed to grow, like it was calling for attention, like something wanted me to come closer. I tried turning on the bedside lamp, but the light flickered 3 times before going out. I tried again. Nothing. That was when I remembered Mrs. Hara's face, her worried eyes, the way her voice trembled when she warned me. She wasn't joking. She wasn't trying to scare me. She was trying to protect me. But protect me from what? I stepped carefully out of bed, each movement slow, scared of making too much noise. The floorboards creaked under my feet, but the tapping didn't stop. It continued steadily, like a gentle knock from someone who didn't want to seem impatient, but didn't want to be ignored either. As I reached the top of the stairs, I paused. The house felt colder now, like a breeze had moved through it even though all the windows were closed. The tapping was clearer from here, no longer muffled. It was coming from the back hallway, the one that gave me an uneasy feeling earlier. I went down the stairs slowly, gripping the railing tightly. Each step felt heavier, like the house was pushing against me, urging me to turn back. But something inside me, curiosity, fear, stubbornness, I don't know, pulled me forward. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, the tapping stopped. Just like that, the house went silent, completely silent. Not even the wind outside seemed to move. I stood there, afraid to breathe, afraid to move. And that was when I noticed it, the faint outline of a curtain at the end of the hallway. I didn't remember seeing a curtain earlier. Maybe I was tired, or maybe I didn't look hard enough. But now it hung there, long and dark, covering something behind it. My heart thudded in my chest. I shouldn't go near it. I knew that. I remembered the warning clearly now, every syllable ringing loudly in my mind. Don't look behind the curtain. But the curtain, it wasn't still. It moved, just slightly, just enough to show that something behind it had shifted. I took one small step toward it without even realizing my feet were moving. There was no sound now, no tapping, no dragging, nothing. Only silence and that slow, almost invisible movement of fabric. I should have turned back. I should have gone upstairs, locked the door, and waited until morning. But I didn't. I inched closer, my breath shallow, my hands trembling. The closer I got, the colder the air became, like I was walking straight into a place the house didn't want me to enter. The curtain swayed again, just a little, like someone had exhaled behind it. I reached out one shaking hand, not to open it, just to steady myself. Then, a voice whispered from behind the curtain, soft and close enough that I felt it against my ear even though no one was standing there. Don't. I froze. I hadn't imagined it. Someone or something was behind that curtain, and it knew I was there. Before I could move, before I could run or scream or even step back, the fabric shifted one more time, and something pressed lightly against it from the other side, creating the shape of a hand. A hand waiting, a hand reaching, a hand that shouldn't have been there. And that's when I realized the tapping hadn't been calling me. It had been warning me. For a long moment I couldn't move. My body felt locked in place, like the cold air around me had solidified and sealed me there. The shape of the hand behind the curtain didn't push further, didn't tap, didn't claw or press, just rested there gently, as if reminding me that it existed. The curtain barely touched it, but I could see the outline clearly enough to know it wasn't the shape of anything I wanted to meet in the dark. My breath trembled out of me in small, uneven bursts, and even though the house stayed silent, I felt like it was watching me, the way a room feels different when it knows something it shouldn't. I stepped back slowly, careful not to make a sound. The curtain didn't move again, but something in the air shifted. The cold deepened. It was the kind of cold that doesn't just touch your skin but sinks straight into your bones, heavy and slow. I could feel goosebumps crawling up my arms as I continued backing away until I reached the bottom step. Only then did I finally turn and hurry up the stairs without daring to look back. Every step felt like it took far too long, like the distance between me and that curtain would never be enough. In my room, I shut the door gently, not wanting to risk the noise of a slam. I stood in the dark, listening. Nothing followed me, nothing tapped, nothing whispered, but the quiet felt different now, too aware, too still. I crawled into bed as quietly as possible and pulled the blankets around me, trying to convince myself that I imagined the hand, that maybe shadows or tired eyes tricked me. But a part of me already knew better. There had been weight behind that curtain. Something real. Something that shouldn't have been there. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I expected to hear the tapping again. Or worse, the whisper. But morning came eventually, slow and pale, as if even the sunlight was hesitant to touch the house. When I finally gathered enough courage to go downstairs, I stopped at the bottom step and stared at the hallway. The curtain was gone. Completely gone. No rod, no fabric. Not even a wrinkle on the wall where it had hung. The space was empty. Too empty. For a second I questioned everything. Had I imagined the whole thing? Maybe I had walked into the hallway half asleep and confused a shadow for a curtain. Maybe the tapping was just some normal house noise amplified by the late hour. Maybe nothing had whispered to me at all. But the memory of that cold, of that shape pressing against the cloth, clung to me stubbornly. Not everything could be explained by a lack of sleep. Still, I forced myself to walk toward the spot where the curtain had been. The air felt normal now, not warm, but no longer freezing. The hallway didn't seem as threatening as it had last night. It looked like just any old hallway in a quiet house. I didn't find anything unusual. No marks, no signs of movement, nothing out of place. I checked the rest of the house, trying to calm my nerves. The kitchen seemed normal, the living room unchanged, the dining room untouched. Everything looked frozen in time, yet ordinary. That should have made me feel better, but somehow it didn't. The more normal the house appeared in daylight, the less sense the night made. The contrast between the peaceful morning and the unsettling darkness only deepened the mystery around it. By noon, I tried to settle into a routine. I made tea, walked around the yard, took in the quiet surroundings. The trees around the house moved gently with the wind, casting long shadows over the grass. There was something peaceful about the place, something almost comforting during the daytime. But even then, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Not in a threatening way, but like something in the house was always aware of where I was. A few hours later, I saw a figure walking down the gravel road toward the house. At first I thought it was Mrs. Hara coming to check on me, but as the person came closer, I realized it was a man. He looked about my age, maybe a little older, wearing a faded jacket and carrying a small bag over his shoulder. His steps were slow, cautious, like he wasn't sure he should be approaching the house at all. When he finally reached the front yard, he lifted a hand in greeting. "You must be the one staying here," he said, his voice friendly but edged with something I couldn't quite place. Curiosity, maybe concern. "I'm Rowan. I live a few houses down the road." I nodded and introduced myself. He studied me for a few seconds longer than felt normal, his eyes drifting toward the windows of the house. "First night went okay?" he asked. The question sounded simple, but the way he said it made me tense. "Yeah," I lied. "Quiet." Rowan's expression tightened. "Good. That's good." He shifted his weight like he wanted to say more, like something sat heavily on his tongue, holding him back. "You know something about the house?" I asked quietly. He exhaled slowly. "Everybody knows something, but no one knows everything." He glanced toward the back hallway through the slightly open front door. "Did she warn you?" The words sent a chill down my spine. "Warn me about what?" He hesitated, then ran a hand through his hair. "The curtain. The one that shouldn't be there." I felt my heartbeat skip. He wasn't guessing. He knew exactly what I had seen. "I saw it last night," I admitted cautiously. "And something behind it." Rowan nodded like he expected that. "That's usually when it appears for newcomers. The house tests you." He paused, lowering his voice even though no one else was nearby. "But it's not the house that's dangerous. It's what's behind the curtain." His words were simple, but they sank into me with a weight that made breathing harder. "What is behind it?" I asked. Rowan looked away, his jaw tightening. "No one knows for sure, but it's old. Older than the house. Older than the town. And it doesn't like being seen." His warning reminded me of the voice from last night, the whisper telling me not to do what I had been moments away from doing. I couldn't tell whether that made the presence good or bad. Was it warning me for my safety, or warning me so I wouldn't interfere with whatever it was doing? "Did you ever see it?" I asked him. Rowan's eyes darkened. "Once. I was 14. I didn't sleep for weeks after. And the curtain. It kept coming back, even when I didn't want it to." His words sent goosebumps down my arms again. If he had seen it too, that meant it wasn't just a dream or imagination. It was something real, something that existed long before I arrived here. What does it want? I whispered. Rowan shook his head. No one knows. But it always appears when someone new sleeps here. It doesn't always do anything. But it watches. And sometimes if you get too close. He stopped abruptly, his expression tightening like he had almost said too much. Just be careful, he finished softly. Before I could ask anything else, Rowan glanced nervously at the house again, then took a step back. I should go. If you need anything, I'm not far. Just don't stay up too late tonight. And with that, he left. His words stayed with me long after he disappeared down the road. The house felt different again, like Rowan's presence had stirred something in the air. I stood at the doorway for a long time, staring at the empty hallway where the curtain had been. Nothing moved, nothing whispered, but I could feel something lingering there. A quiet awareness, waiting patiently for nightfall. As the sun began to set again, painting the sky with fading colors, a sinking feeling grew in my chest. The night before had been strange, unsettling, but somehow I felt like it had only been the beginning. Like the house had shown me just a small glimpse of what it hid. And when darkness finally settled over the trees and wrapped the house in silence, I found myself listening again, waiting for any small sound that didn't belong. I didn't have to wait long, because just past midnight, from the same hallway as before, I heard the softest sound. Not tapping this time, not whispering, just the gentle, unmistakable rustle of fabric, as if something had returned, and the curtain was back. The rustling sound drifted through the hallway so softly at first that I almost convinced myself it was my imagination again. But the longer I listened, the clearer it became. It wasn't random or clumsy. It was steady, almost patient, as if whatever was behind the curtain knew I was awake and listening. I stayed frozen in my bed, staring at the dark doorway of my room. A faint glow from the moon spilled through the window, casting pale shapes across the floor. Everything was still except for that one sound, that gentle movement that didn't belong to any normal part of the house. I waited several minutes, hoping the sound would fade on its own. But it didn't. If anything, it grew softer, like it was trying not to frighten me, though that only made it worse. I pulled the blankets tighter around me and closed my eyes, telling myself not to check. Not this time. But curiosity has a strange way of pushing itself through fear. The more I tried to ignore the sound, the more my mind raced with questions. Why had it come back? Why did it appear only at night? What did it want? Eventually, I got out of bed, but I didn't turn on any lights. Somehow, the darkness felt safer than risking a flicker or something unexpected happening when the switch clicked. I stepped quietly toward my bedroom door and stood there, listening. The house seemed to hold its breath again. It wasn't just silence. It was the kind of silence that feels full, like something unseen is waiting with you. I moved slowly down the stairs, gripping the railing lightly to keep my balance. When I reached the bottom step, the air felt colder again, exactly like the night before. That same heavy, bone-deep cold that made me wonder if the temperature had really changed or if it was something else entirely. Something not meant to be in this world. I turned toward the hallway, and there it was. The curtain hung exactly as it had the previous night. Long, dark, unmoving, but somehow more solid this time, as though it had fully settled into place. The fabric seemed thicker, heavier, like it had absorbed the shadows from the hallway. I couldn't see anything behind it, but I could feel it. A quiet presence, waiting, watching. I took one step forward, not because I wanted to, but because something inside me felt drawn to it, pulled almost. The closer I got, the tighter the silence wrapped around me, until it felt like my ears were underwater. No ticking clock, no wind outside, no distant owl. Only the cold air shifting in tiny breaths. Just as I reached the halfway point of the hallway, a new sound echoed from outside. A sudden crunch of gravel, like someone had stepped on it with their full weight. I jumped, my heart leaping into my throat. The sound came again, sharper this time. Someone was outside. I turned away from the curtain and moved quickly to the front door, peeking through the narrow window beside it. At first I saw nothing but darkness and the outline of trees. Then a shadow passed near the porch. I couldn't see the person clearly, but the shape looked familiar. Someone tall wearing a jacket. Rowan. He walked closer until the moonlight softened enough for me to recognize his face. He looked tense, almost out of breath, as if he had been walking faster than usual. He knocked softly, glancing over his shoulder like he was expecting something to follow him. I opened the door halfway, and he stepped inside immediately, closing it behind him as quietly as possible. His eyes darted around the house, especially toward the hallway. "It's back, right?" he whispered. I nodded. Rowan exhaled shakily. "I knew you'd hear it again. It always returns the second night." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing small circles in the living room like he was trying to gather the right words. "There's something you need to know," he finally said. "Something people around here don't like talking about. But if you're staying in this house, you can't be left in the dark." My stomach tightened as I waited for him to continue. "This house, it wasn't built around the curtain," he said quietly. "The curtain came first." I stared at him, confused. He noticed and nodded. "Before the house existed, before anyone lived on this land, travelers used to talk about a strange tall curtain that sometimes appeared between the trees. Not a doorway, not a tent, just a curtain standing all by itself. People avoided the place because it made animals act strange. Birds wouldn't fly overhead. Dogs refused to go near it. And if anyone got too close," he paused, swallowing hard, "they said the curtain reacted. Like something behind it woke up." A low chill crept through me, not just from fear but from the idea of something old and patient lingering through generations. "And then the house was built here," he continued, "by a man who claimed he didn't believe in stories. He ignored all warnings. And eventually, he disappeared." "Disappeared how?" I asked quietly. "No one knows. One night he went to sleep and never came back out. His bed was empty in the morning. People searched the woods for days. The only thing that changed was that after he vanished, the curtain started appearing inside the house instead of outside." Rowan's words settled heavily in the air between us. They didn't sound like a tale meant to scare someone. They sounded like something he believed deeply, something he had experienced himself. "And no one moved in after that?" I asked. "People tried, but the curtain kept showing up. Not every night, but often enough." Rowan paused. "And those who got too close never stayed long." The room felt colder with every sentence he spoke. I found myself glancing toward the hallway again, half expecting the curtain to shift or breathe or lean forward. "But why does it appear at night only?" I asked. "Why not during the day?" Rowan shook his head. "It's easier for it to cross through at night." "Cross through what?" He hesitated. "Whatever is on the other side." His words echoed in my mind like an open door creaking on its hinges. "Can it see us?" I whispered. Rowan's expression darkened, and he nodded slowly. "It sees everything." I swallowed hard. "And what happens if someone tries to move the curtain?" His eyes widened slightly, almost alarmed. "Don't. People have tried. They said the fabric feels normal at first, but when you pull it, it feels heavier. Like you're dragging something through that doesn't want to come out. And if you force it." He didn't finish the sentence, but the silence that followed said enough. Conflict swirled inside me, half fear, half curiosity. A part of me wanted to leave the house immediately, run down the road, sleep anywhere else. But another part of me needed to understand. Needed to know why it appeared to me, why it whispered, why the hand behind it felt more curious than hostile. As Rowan paced, lost in thought, another sound drifted from the hallway, soft, slow, unmistakable. The curtain rustled again. But this time it wasn't just movement. A faint silhouette appeared through the fabric. Not a hand, not a face, something taller, something standing perfectly still. Rowan froze mid-step, his eyes widening with dread. "It's never done that before," he whispered. We both stared, breath caught in our throats, as the silhouette shifted slightly, just enough to show it was aware of us. And then, a soft, barely audible whisper slid through the air. Not from behind the curtain, but from somewhere closer. somewhere inside the room with us. Don't look. The rest of the sentence faded into the dark, leaving the words hanging between us like a warning or a threat. The silhouette behind the curtain swayed, and everything inside the house fell completely silent. The whisper drifted through the room so lightly that for a moment I thought it came from inside my own mind. Rowan stood perfectly still, his chest barely rising as he struggled not to breathe too loudly. The silhouette behind the curtain didn't move again, but its presence was stronger now, heavy, aware, focused on us in a way I could feel more than see. The air in the house tightened, as if something invisible had wrapped itself around the walls, listening to every heartbeat. Rowan slowly stepped closer to me, his voice barely a breath. It's getting stronger. It's never shown itself this much. Something's different tonight. I didn't speak. Couldn't. My eyes stayed locked on the curtain, waiting for another shift, another whisper, another sign that whatever was behind it was preparing to do more than just watch. The shadow stretched taller for a second, then shortened again, almost as if it were adjusting its posture. The fabric barely moved, but somehow I knew it was leaning closer from the other side. Why is it doing that? I whispered. Rowan shook his head. I don't know. Maybe because you heard it the first night. Maybe because you got too close. He hesitated, then added, or maybe it wants something. Those words made something cold settle in my stomach. Wanting meant intention, purpose, and nothing about that idea felt safe. The hallway lights flickered, dimming until they were barely glowing. For a moment, the only thing visible was the faint outline of the curtain and the darker shape behind it. I reached instinctively for the nearest lamp, but before my fingers could touch the switch, Rowan grabbed my wrist. No lights, he whispered. It reacts to them. I swallowed hard and let my hand fall. The house felt alive now, pulsing with a quiet energy that seemed to throb in time with the movement of the shadow. The moonlight from the window wasn't enough to brighten the hall, but it cast a thin line of silver across the curtain's bottom edge. The fabric twitched again, very gently, like someone's fingers brushing it from the other side. Rowan leaned closer to me. Listen carefully. We cannot go near it right now. When it shows itself like this, it's aware. Too aware. What happens if we do? I asked. He didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened, and his eyes drifted back to the hallway. People say if you look for too long, it looks back. And once it does, it doesn't forget your face. Those words were enough to keep me rooted to the living room floor. But even as fear held me still, something else tugged at me. A strange, quiet curiosity I couldn't explain. It wasn't reckless curiosity. It was more like the presence behind the curtain was calling softly, inviting, drawing me closer with something that felt almost like recognition. As if it already knew me, as if it had been waiting. Suddenly, 3 sharp knocks struck the front door. Knock, knock, knock. Rowan jumped. I took a step back instinctively. The timing felt too deliberate, too perfectly placed in the silence, as if someone outside had been watching the entire time. Is that? I whispered. Rowan shook his head. No one knocks on this house at night. The knocking repeated, slow and steady, each hit echoing through the house in a way that made the floorboards tremble. We exchanged a tense glance. Rowan moved toward the door carefully, avoiding the hallway, but I grabbed his arm. Don't open it. He hesitated. It could be someone needing help. It could be something else, I replied. The knocking stopped. Silence stretched through the house again. Then, from the other side of the door, a voice spoke, soft, low, and chillingly calm. Let me in. My skin prickled instantly. The tone was too smooth, too controlled. It didn't sound like someone seeking help or shelter. It sounded like someone waiting. Rowan's face went pale. He stepped back from the door slowly, not taking his eyes off it. That's not a person. Before either of us could speak again, the curtain behind us rustled loudly, as if reacting to the voice. The silhouette shifted closer, pressing against the fabric enough to create a clearer shape. Rowan grabbed my arm and pulled me away from the hallway. We have to stay here, he whispered urgently. Don't look back. Outside, footsteps began circling the house. Slow, deliberate, heavy enough that we could feel the vibrations through the wooden floor. They moved from the front door to the windows, then toward the back. Each step seemed to match the faint swaying of the curtain, like the two presences, inside and outside, were connected somehow. "What does it want?" I whispered, barely moving my lips. Rowan shook his head helplessly. "I don't know, but I think it's trying to get inside, and whatever's behind the curtain doesn't want it to." The idea of two unseen forces surrounding us made my heartbeat thicken in my chest. I could hear the footsteps circling faster now, like someone pacing or searching for the right angle. Then suddenly, from the back of the house, there was a slow dragging sound across the outer wall, something scraping along the siding. I flinched. Rowan grabbed my shoulder to steady me. His voice was almost inaudible when he spoke. "It's looking for a way in." The scraping lasted several long seconds, then stopped abruptly. Silence filled the house again, but the tension only grew. I felt the temperature drop sharply. The air grew heavier. The curtain rustled again, louder this time, like something behind it was shifting in agitation. Rowan's breathing quickened. "It's reacting to whatever's out there," he whispered. "This has never happened before." Before I could respond, the front door handle began to turn slowly. Once, twice, as if someone was gently testing it. "It's locked, right?" I whispered. Rowan nodded, but he didn't look confident. The handle jiggled again, harder now. Then the knocking resumed, louder, sharper, as if growing impatient. "Let me in," the voice repeated, this time calmer, almost polite. "I've been waiting." The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight. The voice didn't sound like Rowan. It didn't sound like me, but it sounded strangely familiar, like someone I had heard before. Someone from a long time ago, or maybe a dream. The curtain behind us shifted violently. Rowan and I spun around. The silhouette behind the fabric stretched taller, rising until it nearly touched the ceiling. The curtain fluttered, though no wind moved through the house. Then a whisper came again, softer than before, but closer, much closer. "Don't let it in." The voice trembled as if struggling, as if whatever was speaking was fighting to stay behind the curtain, not step through it. Then, without warning, the knocking on the door stopped. Complete stillness. Everything froze at once, the curtain, the lights, the air. Rowan and I stood there, barely breathing, waiting for anything to move, anything to break the silence. And then, a single whisper drifted from the other side of the door. This time, the voice was my own. "Let me in." My heart stopped. Rowan grabbed my arm so tightly it almost hurt. His voice cracked in panic. "Don't listen to it. It's trying to mimic you." Before I could react, the lights flickered violently. The curtain behind us swelled outward, as if something enormous pressed against it from the other side, ready to break through. And then the entire house, the walls, the floor, the air, felt like it inhaled all at once. A deep, heavy breath, pulling everything inward, pulling us toward the hallway, pulling us toward the curtain, pulling us toward whatever waited behind the fabric. And in that moment, every instinct in my body screamed that the climax was coming. But we weren't ready for it. The silence that followed was so complete that Emma could hear her own heartbeat tapping against her ribs like a warning drum. The curtain in the corner barely moved now, hanging still and heavy, as if it were waiting for someone to come closer. The strange glow behind it had dimmed, not gone completely, but weakened, like an eye narrowing, observing, deciding. Daniel didn't move either. His hands rested at his sides, but Emma saw the tension in his shoulders, the way he stood slightly angled in front of her, as if he still wasn't sure what might come through that narrow slit in the fabric. For a moment, Emma thought the hum in the room had disappeared, but then she noticed it again, much softer now, almost like a deep breath being held. She felt the temperature shifting too, a warm current rolling across the floor and brushing past her ankles. The room didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied, like something unseen had stepped closer just when the light faded. The air felt thick with meaning she couldn't understand, words she couldn't hear, and warnings she couldn't ignore. Daniel took a slow step back, finally breaking the stillness. "Don't go near it," he whispered, barely turning his head. "Whatever that was, it's not done yet." His voice was so low Emma almost missed it, but she heard the tremble inside it, the kind that didn't come from fear alone, more like recognition. Emma swallowed hard. "You've seen this before, haven't you?" He closed his eyes briefly, almost like he regretted something. Then he nodded. "Once," he said. "A long time ago, before I knew what it meant." The words hit her like a sudden cold wind. The room dimmed a little more. Outside, a distant owl hooted, and the night pressed harder against the old house. Emma waited for him to continue, but he didn't. He kept staring at the curtain, jaw clenched, as if speaking more might make something react. She stepped a bit closer to him, not to the curtain. "Daniel, what did you see?" He hesitated, his eyes still fixed on the fabric. "I saw the same glow. I heard the same hum. And I saw a shadow behind the curtain. But I didn't listen to the warnings back then." He finally looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. "I looked behind it." Emma felt her stomach drop, but before she could say anything, a soft clicking sound came from the far corner, right from behind the curtain. It wasn't loud or violent. It was slow, rhythmic, like someone tapping their fingernails lightly against wood. Tap, tap, tap. The glow brightened again, just slightly, enough to cast a faint white line along the floor. Emma felt her breath catch. "Daniel!" He stepped back again, pulling her with him. "It never does that unless it's reacting to someone," he whispered. "It knows we're here. It knows we're talking about it." She tried not to look directly at the curtain, but her eyes kept drifting toward it on their own. There was no shape behind it now, no clear movement, but she felt something like a presence leaning forward, pressing against the thin barrier. The tapping grew a little faster, then stopped abruptly, like someone holding their hand in the air, deciding their next move. "Why did you come back if you already knew?" Emma asked quietly. Daniel looked toward the window instead of answering, gazing into the dark woods surrounding the house. "Because the warnings stopped mattering when I realized it wasn't just about me. This thing, whatever it is, it follows curiosity. Anyone who even thinks too hard about the curtain becomes tied to it somehow." Emma felt her skin prickle. "So you're saying?" "Yes," he said firmly, cutting her off. "You're part of this now. I brought you here, and that means it knows you. It listens when someone new enters the room." Emma's heart pounded. The key words in her mind: mystery, suspense, bedtime story, unsettling truth, felt far too real now. This wasn't just some forgotten room in an old house. It felt like a doorway to something quietly waiting, something patient but aware. The curtain fluttered suddenly, like a breeze had swept across it. But the air was still. Emma and Daniel both froze. A faint whisper seemed to brush the room, so soft she wasn't sure if it was sound or imagination. It wasn't a word, just a breathy shift of air. But it felt directed. Felt intentional. Daniel grabbed her arm. "We need to move back. Slowly. Don't turn your back on it." Emma obeyed without question, stepping backward inch by inch. She kept her eyes locked on the curtain even as her mind screamed to look away. Every instinct told her she wasn't supposed to be here, that whatever lingered behind that fabric saw more than she understood. As they reached the doorway, the glow faded again, leaving the room dim and trembling with silence. Emma nearly stumbled onto the hallway floor, but Daniel steadied her. "Why did it react like that?" she whispered. Daniel's eyes flickered with worry. "Because it knows something changed." Emma frowned. "Changed how?" Before Daniel could answer, the hum stopped completely. All sound vanished. And then, a soft footprint pressed into the dusty floorboards right next to the curtain. One perfect footprint. Fresh, clear, human. But there was no one standing there. Emma slapped her hand over her mouth to stop a scream from escaping. Daniel went still as stone. The house felt like it was holding its breath with them. Then, as if responding to the rising tension between them, the curtain slowly shifted again. Not from wind, not from touch, but as if something unseen had stepped closer from behind it. The fabric pushed forward just slightly, as though a face leaned an inch too close to the surface. Emma's throat tightened. "Daniel, what is it doing?" He didn't look at her. His eyes stayed locked on the curtain, horror and regret mixing in his expression. "It's choosing," he said quietly. "It always chooses someone." Emma's pulse thudded painfully in her chest. "Someone for what?" Daniel swallowed. "For the next part." The curtain trembled again, and Emma felt the air shift dramatically, warmer, heavier, like a presence stepping right up to her. She took a shaky breath, every nerve firing with fear and curiosity. The footprint deepened, as if weight settled onto it. And then, another footprint appeared, closer to them. Emma felt her vision blur with panic as she realized the truth. The unseen figure was moving straight toward them, one quiet step at a time. The air grew warmer still. The glow flickered like a heartbeat, and the curtain finally stilled, completely. Emma didn't dare blink. She didn't dare speak. And in that thick, suffocating silence, something brushed past her shoulder. Not a hand, not a breath, just a faint shift of the air, as if someone invisible had quietly walked by. Then the hallway lights flickered, once, twice, and went out. The story hung there, suspended in darkness, the tension tightening like a rope. Emma inhaled shakily. Daniel whispered her name, and somewhere behind them, the floorboards creaked under a new, unseen weight. Everything was about to change. Emma didn't breathe for a moment. The darkness felt alive, as if it were made of something thicker than air, something watching them from every angle. She waited for Daniel to say something, anything, but he stayed perfectly still beside her. She could hear the tension in the way he inhaled, slow, careful, like even breathing too loudly might draw attention from whatever had slipped past them. Then, faintly, the glow behind the curtain returned. But this time it wasn't soft or distant. It spread across the floor in a thin line, almost like a path, stretching toward the doorway where they stood. The footprints on the dusty boards dimmed in the half-light, but they didn't disappear. Instead, they seemed to settle deeper, as if someone had taken their place firmly and wasn't planning on moving. Emma took a shaky step back. "Daniel, is it coming after us?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes flicked between the glowing path and the dark hallway. "No," he murmured finally. "I think it wants us to follow." Emma stared at him. "Follow? Into what?" Daniel kept his voice low. "Into whatever it's been hiding all this time. This is different. Last time it didn't guide me. It chased me." The way he said last time made Emma's skin tighten. She couldn't imagine Daniel running from anything. He always seemed grounded, calm, steady. But now, he looked like a man carrying years of fear he'd never fully spoken about. The glow pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. Emma swallowed hard. "What happens if we don't follow it?" Daniel hesitated. "We might never understand what it wants. And it won't stop until we do." Something about his words, gentle but edged with truth, made Emma feel a surprising surge of courage. She wasn't sure if it came from the need to protect herself or the feeling that she was finally close to an answer she had been unknowingly searching for. Together, they stepped back into the room. The glow brightened slightly, almost like approval. The curtain remained still now, no rustling or trembling. It looked perfectly ordinary, except for the light behind it. Emma paused a foot away from it. "What now?" Daniel moved beside her, his voice steady but soft. "We pull it back, but this time we do it together." Emma nodded, her fingers trembling as she reached for the edge of the curtain. Daniel's hand hovered near hers, not touching but close enough that she felt supported. The glow behind the fabric shifted upward, as if rising to meet them. Emma took a breath, counted silently. 1, 2, 3. They lifted the curtain. Behind it there was no creature, no shadowy figure, no doorway to another world. Instead, they found a narrow alcove carved into the wall, one that looked like it didn't belong in a house this old. Smooth stone, polished subtly, formed a half-circle enclosure. At the center of it stood an old wooden box, small enough to fit in someone's arms but heavy-looking, covered in carvings of spirals and symbols Emma didn't recognize. The glow wasn't coming from a being. It was coming from the carvings themselves, each line shining faintly like threads of light. Emma stepped closer, the tension shifting into awe. "What is this?" Daniel exhaled shakily. "This is what scared me all those years ago. Not because it hurt me, but because I wasn't supposed to see it." He crouched and placed a hand near the box without touching it. "I think this is the reason the curtain exists. To hide this, to test the curious, to see who follows the warnings and who doesn't." Emma frowned. "But why would it show itself now?" Daniel looked up at her. "Because this time it chose you." The words hit her unexpectedly. The glow brightened just a little when he said it. Emma hesitated, unsure what to do next, but something inside her felt like stepping away would be a mistake. Slowly, gently, she placed her fingers on the lid of the box. The glow softened, almost calming. She lifted the lid. Inside the box was a single object, a small circular mirror, its surface dull and fogged, like it hadn't been touched in years. But the moment Emma picked it up, the mirror cleared. Her reflection stared back at her, wide-eyed, breath held, confused. Then something strange happened. Her reflection blinked, but she didn't. Emma froze. Daniel stepped forward, alarmed, but she held up her hand. "Wait!" The reflection blinked again, slower this time, as if waking up. Then, without Emma moving an inch, the reflection lifted its hand. The wrong hand, the opposite hand. Emma's breath hitched. "Daniel!" Her reflection leaned closer, lips moving silently behind the glass. And then, in the faintest whisper, a voice echoed from the mirror. Not loud, not threatening, but unmistakably real. "Thank you for finally looking." Emma dropped the mirror in shock. It didn't break. Instead, it landed gently on the stone floor with a soft chime, as if something unseen had caught it. The glow around the box dimmed. The footprints on the floor slowly faded. The hum that had followed them all night faded into silence. Daniel knelt beside the mirror, staring at it like an answer decades overdue. All this time, it wasn't a warning to keep away. It was a warning to be ready when someone finally opened it. Emma felt the air shift, lighter now, calmer. The presence in the room no longer felt heavy or watching. Felt released, like something trapped had finally found what it needed. She exhaled slowly. "So it's over?" Daniel nodded, but just as he opened his mouth to speak, the mirror gave a tiny flicker. Emma looked down and saw her reflection again. But this time, the reflection wasn't copying her movements. It was smiling, slowly, softly, knowingly. Emma stepped back, heart pounding. Daniel stood up quickly, eyes wide. "Emma, don't move." But before he could say anything more, the mirror's surface shimmered, ripples spreading across it like moving water. Emma watched in stunned silence as her reflection slowly lifted a hand and placed it against the inside of the glass, almost like it was trying to step forward. The glow returned, brighter than before. The hum vibrated gently through the room. Emma realized something as a chill crept through her. The story wasn't ending. Not really. The curtain had hidden the first secret. The box had held the second. But the mirror held the twist neither of them had seen coming. And as her reflection pressed again on the glass, the surface began to push outward. Emma froze, unable to pull her eyes away from the mirror as the surface continued to ripple outward. It wasn't violent or frightening, just unsettling, like watching a reflection decide it was tired of staying flat and wanted to step into the room. Daniel moved a little closer, but he didn't reach out. He seemed torn between protecting Emma and not interfering with something far older and wiser than either of them. The glow around the mirror softened into a warm white, and the hum that had filled the room for so long shifted into something gentler, almost like a calm breath. Then, just as Emma braced herself for the reflection to break through the surface, it stopped. The ripples slowed and faded. The raised shape pressing outward eased back, like it had changed its mind. Emma blinked, breath trembling. Her reflection now mirrored her perfectly again, doing exactly what she did. Nothing more. Daniel let out a slow, controlled exhale. "It's not trying to replace you," he whispered. "It just wanted to be seen." Emma crouched slowly and picked up the mirror, holding it carefully with both hands. It felt warm now, almost like a living pulse tingled through its frame. She lifted it closer to her face, watching her reflection settle fully into normal movement. Nothing strange. No separate blinking. No reverse gestures. Just her. "You think that's all it wanted?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded. Some things trap a part of themselves when they're forgotten. Maybe whatever presence was here, it needed someone to acknowledge it so it could let go. Emma studied the mirror again, noticing something she hadn't before. The carvings on the wooden box matched faint patterns on the mirror's edge. The symbols glowed faintly when she tilted the mirror a certain way, then faded again, almost shy. She wondered how many years, maybe decades, the curtain had been hiding these secrets, waiting for someone to ignore the warnings and brave the unknown. She glanced at the curtain now. It hung still and plain, just old fabric, no glow behind it, no tension in the air. The footprints that had once tracked across the dusty floor were completely gone, leaving the boards looking untouched. Even the air felt cleaner, lighter, as though the house had finally exhaled after holding a story inside it for too long. Emma stepped back and set the mirror gently inside the box, half expecting something dramatic to happen, but nothing did. The glow dimmed to a soft pulse, then faded entirely. The hum dissolved into silence. For the first time since arriving, the room felt like a normal part of a normal house. Peaceful instead of watchful. Quiet instead of heavy. Daniel walked to the window and looked outside at the dark trees. "It's strange," he said quietly. "The first time I saw the glow, I was terrified. I ran. And I kept running from it in my mind, even years later. But now, it doesn't feel like something to fear anymore." Emma joined him at the window. The forest looked serene, bathed in moonlight. The house itself seemed to settle with them. Like its walls were relieved they weren't holding on to secrets anymore. "Maybe it wasn't a warning to stay away," Emma said softly. "Maybe it was a warning to prepare, to understand what you're seeing before you face it." Daniel smiled a little, spoken like someone who was meant to open that box. Emma leaned against the windowsill. "You think that's why it chose me?" He nodded. "It reacted to you from the moment you entered the room. The footprints, the glow, the hum changing. It wasn't random. It recognized something in you." Emma didn't know what it recognized, but she didn't feel frightened anymore. She felt grounded, like she had stepped into something mysterious and come out with a truth instead of a threat. The whole experience, every shadow, every whisper, every flicker, felt like a reminder that curiosity wasn't always a danger. Sometimes it was the key to ending long-forgotten stories. They walked back toward the alcove. Emma lowered the box's lid gently, and as it clicked into place, a faint warmth pulsed beneath her fingertips. Then, slowly, the glow vanished for good. Daniel reached up and touched the curtain. The fabric didn't move on its own anymore. It only shifted with his touch, like a normal piece of cloth. When Emma looked closer, she noticed something else. The light stains on the floor beneath it, brushed away footprints and smudged dust, all settling into stillness as if the house was resetting itself. "So what do we do with it now?" she asked. Daniel lifted the box. "We keep it safe. Not hidden, just safe. Whatever lived in it isn't trapped anymore. But the mirror and the carvings, they feel like history, like something worth remembering, not fearing." Emma watched as he placed the box gently on a nearby shelf. It looked strangely natural there, almost like the house had been waiting for it to be put back in plain sight instead of behind a curtain. She turned toward the hallway, noticing the lights flickering back on one by one, steady and warm. The floor creaked under their steps, but the sound felt normal now, just wood adjusting, not a presence moving. When they reached the front door, Emma paused and looked back into the house. "It feels different now." Daniel nodded. "It should. Something was released tonight." Emma stepped outside, breathing in the cool night air. The stars above felt brighter, clearer. She felt lighter too, as if she'd shed a weight she never knew she was carrying. Daniel locked the door behind them and walked beside her along the quiet path. "You okay?" he asked. Emma smiled softly. "Yeah, I think I am." They stood beside the car, looking back at the house one last time. The windows glowed gently with the moon's reflection. No shadows moved inside. No glow pulsed behind any curtains. Whatever had lingered there had completed its story at last. But just as Emma turned to open the car door, a faint shimmer caught her eye from the upstairs window. Not a glow, not a figure, just a soft reflection, almost like a wave of light passing through glass. She blinked, and it was gone. She exhaled a small laugh. "Did you see that?" Daniel looked up, squinting. "See what?" Emma shook her head. "Probably nothing. Maybe the mirror just wanted to say goodbye." Daniel chuckled lightly and opened his own door. At least it was polite about it. Emma settled into the seat, feeling warmth rather than fear at the thought. As the car pulled away from the house, she watched the windows fade into the distance. No ominous shapes, no eerie lights, just a quiet house holding memories instead of mysteries. In the end, she realized something important, that sometimes the scariest things weren't really monsters or shadows, but the unknown itself. And once you face it, it becomes something else entirely. Understanding, closure, even peace. As the road curved and the house vanished behind the trees, Emma placed her hand on her chest, feeling her heartbeat calm and steady. The curtain had warned them not to look, but looking had been exactly what set everything free. And with that truth settling inside her, the story found its end. Quiet, complete, and finally at rest.